Hello, Raven. I originally found you on YouTube and was so happy to discover that you have a podcast since I listen to them at work. I love your content. Thank you. So, anyway, this happened to me and my boyfriend at the time, about 8 years ago. We decided to take a trip to Estes Park, Colorado one winter. We rented a cozy little cabin for a few days. The first night we were in there, we settled in at the cabin and went to dinner at a quiet restaurant with a huge window looking out at a dark, woodsy area while the snow fell. It was beautiful, but kind of spooky, if that makes sense. We continued on to the famous and haunted Stanley Hotel that was Stephen King's inspiration for the book The Shining. We had booked a couple of tickets for the latest ghost tour that night, about 10 p.m., I believe. We went all over the hotel. Well, the tour guide told stories about the hotel and described a lot of the haunting experiences people had had. I was an avid picture taker at this point, and I brought my camera everywhere. I was snapping picture after picture. I'll describe some of these photos later. After the tour, we went back to the cabin and sat in the bed watching a little TV before we went to sleep. I closed the bedroom door because I always do that. Not sure why. But since I was a teenager, I've always closed my bedroom door when it's time to sleep. I fell asleep almost immediately while my boyfriend sat up watching TV for a while. Soon after falling asleep, I woke up to knocking. I sat up in bed and looked towards the bedroom door. The knocking was on the bedroom door. I know it was, because the door was getting hit so hard that it was shaking in the frame with each knock. I was so out of it and still half asleep, so I simply said, "Someone's knocking at the door." My boyfriend called out, "Hello? Who's there?" But the knocking just continued, shaking the door. It probably only lasted for about 20 seconds, but it felt so much longer. I lay down and went back to sleep like nothing weird had happened. In the morning, I woke up and this memory immediately came back to me. Since I was half asleep, I asked my boyfriend for confirmation. "Hey, did someone knock on our bedroom door last night?" And he had a horrified look on his face and said, "Yeah, the door was literally shaking in the frame." I asked him what he did. He said, "Well, you were half asleep and seemed completely unconcerned, and I was freaked out, so I just ignored it and eventually fell asleep." The logical thing to do was to check the doors, so I got up and checked the front door. It was locked. I checked the sliding glass back door, and it was also locked. No one could have gotten in last night, and nothing was stolen or moved or anything. I told him, "Well, if it happens again tonight and I'm sleeping, wake me up so I can investigate." He said, "Investigate? You mean open the door?" And then I said yes. He then continued, "And let it in?" I laughed and said, "Sorry to burst your bubble, Jesse, but if it's a ghost, it won't be held by the confines of that door anyway." It didn't happen again the next 2 nights that we stayed there, and when I got home, I finally decided to go through the photos that I took at the haunted hotel. I was shocked to see orbs everywhere. Not tiny ones that could be dust or bugs, but large ones. There were ones that were green and appeared to glow. They were perfect circles, with the edge glowing the brightest and the middle was slightly transparent. They were invisible to the naked eye. At one point during the tour, I took a photo of my boyfriend, and this one freaked me out the most. He was surrounded by glowing orbs. Some just specks, some were large, glowing ones about the size of my fist, and one was half the size of his head. My camera would autofocus and never had any issues. However, in this photo, the orbs, although invisible to the naked eye, were so prominent that the camera focused on the orbs, which were crystal clear, and my boyfriend was fuzzy and out of focus. I think that I still have these photos on one of my many memory cards and photo CDs, and when I have some time, I'm going to go through them. If I can find them, I'll add them to this post. I honestly think that something followed us from the haunted Stanley Hotel back to our cabin that night. I wish I had fully woken up and gotten up to see what was going on. I'll never know what truly happened, but I will never forget what happened that night. For starters, I'm a very skeptical person. Pragmatic, and very down-to-earth, so to say. But what happened to me in my dream kind of changed everything. I was always very close to my grandparents on my father's side. I had a difficult family situation and they were always there for me. Ever since I can remember, me and my sister spent summer holidays on the countryside with my grandparents. When I was 10, we moved in the city near the countryside, and we spent every weekend with them. A few years ago, I moved to another country and I could only visit my family 2 to 3 times a year. When I was pregnant with my second child, my grandpa got sick. Nothing too serious, but there were some complications, and he did die. I was devastated, and I couldn't even go to the funeral because I was pregnant. My grandma started to get sick shortly after and died the next year. My oldest daughter had some health issues, and we were in the middle of a ton of doctor's appointments, which were hard to get, and we just couldn't miss them. I was very sad that I missed another funeral, but we planned to visit the family in a few months, so that made me feel a little better. But I still felt sad and guilty. One night, though, I had a dream. Usually when I think of death and dead people in my dreams, I get really spooked. But this time I felt really calm in this dream. I dreamt that my father was leading me to my grandparents' house. It was very dark and we came to the door. He said, "You have to go in alone," so I did. They were in the living room were my grandparents. The room was exactly as I remember it. It was very light and warm. My grandpa stood up, kind of surprised to see me, but then he hugged me and said, like he always used to, "Hello, my little daughter." And I said, "It's so good to see you. I miss you so much. What are you doing here?" To which he said, "Oh, I was just waiting for Grandma." And then he turned around and I looked at her. She was beautiful. Cheeks red, eyes bright and happy. She just smiled. She was very skinny and old when she died, but now she was so full of life. About the age she was when I was a little girl. I hugged them both, and my grandpa just said, "Go, my daughter, we are fine." Then, I woke up in the middle of the night. But surprisingly for me, I wasn't scared at all. I called my dad the next day and told him about it, and he told me that he dreamt about a light. A warm light flying and disappearing into the sky. Today, I don't know if my guilt made up that dream so that I could say goodbye, or if my grandparents are somewhere where we're not allowed, and someone let me in for just a second. Either way, I felt better and at ease knowing that they are together. Every time I listen to this podcast, I think about writing in with my experience, but could never bring myself to do it until now. This happened to me back in the mid to late 80s. It's haunted me all my life and terrified me so deeply as a child that I never shared it with anyone. I grew up in a small town in the South. We were a well-established neighborhood of low to middle-class families. My sister is 4 years older than me and was in middle school when this occurred. She and my mother had purchased one of those make-your-own dollhouse kits, where you paint the house and then buy all the furniture for it. The kind that they sell at a craft store, not a toy store. I would have been around 2nd or 3rd grade. I was super jealous of this house. They spent so much time on it, and they kept telling me I was too young to have one. They were putting wallpaper in it, and carpets, all this cool antique-looking furniture. I was very envious. About 1 to 2 weeks after they started this dollhouse, I had gone for a walk in the neighborhood. Back in the 80s, we were pretty much free to roam around. A few houses down my street, I see a dollhouse that someone had put out by their weekly trash. I couldn't believe my luck. It was a very similar style to the one that my sister had. I looked it over and couldn't see anything wrong with it. I couldn't figure out why someone would have just put it out in the trash pile. It was especially odd given the house it was at. They were a poorer family that had 3 girls. I'd been at their house countless times, and I had never seen anything like this in their house. After looking it over, I decided it must just be my lucky day. I took the dollhouse home and put it in my playroom. My house was one of those split-level homes where you entered on one floor and all the bedrooms were upstairs, and the playroom was in the basement. My parents did not believe our bedrooms should be used for hanging out in. We only used them for sleep, and all of our toys were in the basement. I spent the rest of the day in the basement playing with that new dollhouse. That night, I went to bed as normal. My sister and I shared a room, and I was having a hard time sleeping. I really wanted to keep playing with that new dollhouse. My sister was asleep, so I poked my head out into the hallway, and it appeared that my parents and brother were sleeping as well. I thought that it sounded like a good idea to sneak downstairs. I walked down that first flight of stairs, and then came to the stairs that led to the basement. The basement was pitch black, except for our light switch. We had a light switch in the basement that would glow orange when it was in the off position. That way you could see where it was on the wall. I was sitting on the top step looking into the basement feeling a little scared because it was so dark, and the orange light had an ominous glow. After sitting there for a few minutes, I started hearing a voice talking to me. It was a low voice, deep, and I couldn't quite make out what it was saying. For some reason, instead of scaring me more, I started walking into the basement to see if I could figure out where this voice was coming from and what it was saying. As I walked downstairs, I turned on the light so I could see better. I could tell the voice was coming from the dollhouse. As I got closer, I could hear that it was saying horrible things. It was talking about wanting to take my soul and sending me to hell. This is something I've pondered on more the older I've gotten. My family was not very religious, and we come from an Episcopal church background. I'm not sure why I thought of how I would have known this at a young age, but I knew this voice belonged to a demon. I just knew it. I could feel it almost like it told me. I started telling it to shut up and that I didn't believe in it, and that it should leave me alone. It had almost a cloud-like presence, and it was coming out of the dollhouse and moving toward me. It was moving in a direction that prevented me from going up the stairs. Instead, it was pushing me to move to the next room in our basement, which was my father's office. I kept telling it to leave me alone and go away. I was shouting at it at the top of my lungs, and I remember wondering why the rest of my family couldn't hear me screaming. I'm getting really scared at this point. I'm trapped in a room with no other exit, and even though I'm screaming, no one can seem to hear me. Then, suddenly, a super bright swirling light appeared above me. It was almost like a tornado funnel with all this wind and light swirling. It sucked the demon into the light, and I remember having this feeling like it told me to run now. I turned and ran out of the room and towards the staircase leading back towards the rest of the house. The staircase had 10 to 12 stairs, and I remember thinking, I'm going to make it. I'm going to get away from this thing. I had 2 steps left to go when I felt a hand grab my right ankle and start pulling me back into the basement. I was screaming and I was using my hands to try to hold on to the top of the stairs. I took my free leg and kicked with all of my might. I got free and continued running as fast as I could. I ran up the second flight of stairs to our bedrooms. I ran to the room that I shared with my sister and slammed the door. I was standing next to my sister's bed when she awoke with a start. She definitely heard the door slam. She kept asking me what was wrong, but I was so scared that I couldn't speak. I didn't have the ability to make a single sound. I guess I freaked my sister out enough that she went and got my parents. I went and slept in their room for the rest of the night. The next day, I walked into the basement, grabbed the dollhouse, and took it back to where I found it on the side of the road. Whatever it was attached to that dollhouse. The demon, or spirit, whatever it was, never came back. Throughout my whole life, I've always been the type of person to have repeated dreams about things that happened, but I have never had a dream that made me relive this experience. I will say that for the next 10 years at least, I would get a pit in my stomach as I approached that stair where it grabbed my ankle. I refused to step on that step. I would jump it every time. My parents still live in that house, and even now, 35 plus years later, I get scared when I start walking down that staircase. I can bring myself to step on that stair now, but I still think about that hand on my ankle that was trying to drag me down. Hi Raven. I found your channel a few months ago, and your glitch videos are a regular bedtime routine for me now. My story is, however, paranormal in nature, and only just happened on February 23rd. I live at home with mom and younger brother. Last night, my brother was working a night shift, so not at home, and my mom was in her own room fast asleep. I went to bed late, around 3 a.m., and I woke up to the sound of the coffee table in my room being dragged towards my bed at around 4 in the morning. I woke up startled and put out my hand to stop the coffee table and couldn't help but shout, "What the hell?" The room was dark, so I couldn't see clearly or see anything, but I got up and switched the light on. The door was closed and nobody was around or awake in the house. The next day, I was thinking to myself, that was definitely not a dream, but then started doubting myself. Surely it wasn't some sort of paranormal activity out of nowhere. I wasn't even 100% convinced that such a thing really existed. However, I tell my brother lightheartedly about what happened, and we were kind of joking about it until later on when I told my mom, and it suddenly dawned on her that it was her late mother's 26th anniversary. I'm now convinced that this was not a vivid dream and not a coincidence. My grandmother was very close to my mom and would be in our house daily when I was young. My mom told me that it would have been around the same time in the early hours of the morning that her mom, my grandmother, passed away. I hope this was just a friendly hello from my granny, but I can't help but feel a little freaked out. Wish me luck falling asleep again tonight. Also, I remember that I used to love asking my granny to tell me ghost stories, as she knew loads of them, and was a great storyteller. Hi Raven. Back when I was a teenager, my family took a summer trip to visit my grandmother. My grandfather had passed away in 1984, so we wanted to visit the cemetery and take some flowers. My grandmother had recently been, and didn't want to go with us this time. We cleaned up my grandfather's plot and added the new flowers. My mother was the only one who wore a watch that day, so she was going to keep an eye on the time because we wanted to leave around 4:30 to pick up some groceries and some supper to take back to my grandmother. The cemetery was in a bit of disarray, with flowers and all sorts of little things scattered around. Maybe a recent storm had done it. Anyway, we cleaned and neatened the surrounding graves as much as we could. We checked with my mother about the time, and she answered that it was not yet 4 o'clock. So we kept walking and talking and clearing and cleaning. We really got things looking better. We checked with my mother again, but it was not yet 4 o'clock. So we tended my grandfather's spot some more and just took our time. Eventually, we noticed the sun was setting. We asked my mother about the time. And again, it was not yet 4 o'clock. That's when she realized her watch had stopped. What time was it? We had no idea. We judged that we had only been sitting at the cemetery for an hour or so how was the sun setting? We hurriedly ran to our car and jumped in. My grandmother must have been very upset when we didn't come home back on time. My mother was very disappointed with her watch. It was a wind-up and very reliable. She took it off, shook it, listened to it, but it just wouldn't work. She threw it in frustration and it bounced off the windshield, landing on the dash. My dad drove us out of the cemetery and we were all silent. Just as we crossed the gate, we heard tick, tick, tick. My mother's watch had started working again. We hurried to my grandmother and she was worried. She had already called the highway patrol to report us missing. My dad ran to the store to get the food. We told my grandmother what had happened and she said, "Oh, that was your grandfather. He had always said the young folks were in such a hurry, never taking the time to truly slow down and enjoy a good visit. He promised one day that he would stop our watches so we wouldn't know when it was time to leave." Back in 2019, my house was getting renovated due to a slab leak that had gotten worse over the 20 years we owned the house. We needed to leave, so we went to our cabin up deep in the woods. Let's just make it clear that this was my great-great-grandma's house in the early 60s, so it was really old. As soon as we got up there, some odd occurrences started, like lights flickering on and off, and pictures falling off the walls. But we just ignored it. One night, it went too far. It happened on the 4th day we were there. We were all asleep when all of a sudden we heard stomping coming from the hall, and this was a loud stomping back and forth, until it just stopped. Then, early the next morning, I woke up to a figure standing in my doorway. It was humming a soft tune. It was like a nursery rhyme, but off. The second I heard the humming, I felt scared, and all of a sudden I blacked out and then woke up on the floor. I told my mom about it the next morning, and she told me that she heard a loud bang from my room and came in running. She saw me on the floor and looked around, only to see my great-great-grandma. But she was smiling and humming the same tune that I heard, and she blacked out too. We left that cabin in a matter of hours, and I hope to never experience that again. Hi, Raven. A friend introduced me to your channel last year. I listen both at work and as I fall asleep, so thank you. Thank you for listening. I guess just for a little context, I'm Indigenous on the West Coast, British Columbia. My parents both grew believing in the spirits and afterlife. I have a few stories of experiences that we've had, and I would have only been about 6 when my mom's younger brother passed, and she was sitting up one night after we went to bed, baking for the school week, and she glanced to the doorway to our kitchen, and he was standing there leaning on the frame and said, "Smells good, sis," and then he disappeared. Fast forward to me being 18, my and my parents' bedrooms were in the basement at this time, and my dad's father passed away. Now, I never really knew the man, but I woke up one morning before work and heard work boots going up the stairs. I thought, oh good, coffee must be ready. I got up and opened my bedroom door, and my dad was still sound asleep. When I asked him after, he said that it would have been your grandpa letting you know he's here. When I was about 11, my mom's younger sister passed away, and then when I was in my 20s, my grandma, mom's mom, passed away. After both, I woke up in the middle of the night/early morning and felt someone sit at the foot of my bed and lean over me, and all I said was, "Thank you for being here for me." At one point, one of my cousins, let's call him Charles, was living with my brothers and I, and he came home from work and went to his room and laid on his bed playing games on his phone. He heard someone laughing. Thinking it was my brother, he called out and got no answers, so he got up and went to look. The house was dark and he was alone. And most recently, my boyfriend, let's call him Tyson, had a few experiences. We had been together just over a year, and one night we were laying in bed watching TV, and we both watched the doorknob to the bedroom turn. Our first thought being that it's not like my brother to not knock first. The door opened and then stopped. I got up and said, "Thank you for letting me know you're here." Tyson's only reaction was, "WTF?" Tyson went away for work and came home after a few weeks, and we stayed up one night having drinks and watching movies, just spending as much time together as possible. Well, we fell asleep, probably only for a few hours, and he heard someone banging on the bedroom door. And this has happened to me in the past, and he jumped up half asleep thinking he was late for work. He got dressed and popped out the door saying, "Almost ready." And someone was standing at the end of the hallway and held up a cup of coffee before walking down the stairs. He paused, realizing where he was, and woke me up asking when my brother, who doesn't live with us anymore, got home. I told him he wasn't. He was kind of freaked out when he told me what happened. Tyson is still away for work, and my sister recently passed away, and I can only assume that when he finally comes to see me, there will be more activity. This story takes place a few years before the COVID-19 shutdown in New Orleans. My friend, who I'm going to call Cameron for the safety of this story, and myself decided to go to this abandoned hotel next to the main library on Loyola Avenue. We walked all the way to what we assumed was the lobby, and as soon as we got situated, I put my phone flashlight at an angle where we could still see, but it wasn't really that bright. So he and I are just sitting there, and I see this shadow figure in the distance walk across the room. Immediately after that, my friend starts saying that he's seeing demons. After the 10th time of saying that he's seeing demons, I start to feel uncomfortable in the building, and I tell my friend that I'm ready to go. He tells me that he wants to stay for 15 more minutes. I don't know why I said this, but I told him okay. And after 15 minutes, I started grabbing my things and we started heading towards the entrance that we took to get there, and then we left. I never returned to that abandoned hotel ever again after that. So that, my friends, was a collection of some paranormal stories, some chilling paranormal stories. Definitely some interesting stories in this one, some different ones. Not quite in the norm of paranormal. Definitely some bizarre ones. They don't get too many haunted item stories. There's a word for that. What is the word? Think. Nope, it's not there. I want to say it starts with an A, but my brain was like, a probate, and that's definitely not the word I'm looking for. Oh, it's not coming to me. Oh well. Maybe someone in the comments will tell me. If you know the word, please let me know. I think it starts with an A. I might be wrong. It's like, it's here, but it's just not coming to the forefront. So, anyways, hopefully you enjoyed these paranormal stories. If you did, please do hit that like button. That would help a lot. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider subscribing. That would help a lot as well. You can also leave me a comment with whatever word I'm looking for is, and then whatever the word I'm looking for is, and then just let me know your thoughts, how you're doing, how things are going. To let you know how things are going, the end of this week, Patience and I will once again be in Minnesota. We will be doing the inspection on a house. So, the closing date is in the middle of May, if everything goes well. We've been pre-approved, they've accepted the offer. Looks like we're moving to Minnesota, guys. So yeah, There might be a little bit of break in between videos sometimes during this month and next. I'm going to try not to push off the content as... I'm going to try not to push it off as much as possible. I intend to still do at least 3 videos a week, but I'm just letting you guys know, if things get difficult, there may not be live streams during the week, or there may not be 3 videos, one of the two. I don't know. I'm going to try. I don't like to not do content, but I know you guys know moving sucks, so we'll do what we can. We'll do as we can, so. Anyways, you can join Patreon and memberships, get early access to content like this. Doing that supports the channel tremendously. You can do a super thanks, just a couple bucks to the channel, which also helps tremendously. You guys don't even know how much that kind of stuff helps. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcast, Audible. I'm all over the place, so yeah. All that said, my friends, I hope you're having a beautiful weekend. I hope I see you again here very soon, but until then, remember that you are loved, you are valid, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love, and sleep well.